God, we'll say God's out here, this is God. If God is also one of these ideas, for Durkheim, then the idea of God comes from the group, from the group's own sense of itself, from its own power and its ability to come together and project out its own ideas. And so if this group dies away, so if the group is no more, then this process by which this God idea came to be born and animated dies away, and then hence, for Durkheim, the God itself dies away. Now, as many of you pointed out, this is very provocative, because what he's basically arguing is that religion is real, but it's not real in his words, because there's a real God out there that comes to encounter a social group and make the social group to be owned by this God, but instead the social group itself has this kind of unconscious way of coming together and discovering itself and putting that out into the form of a totem or a flag or the idea of God, and relating to that totem or flag or idea of God as something external to itself. But, and this is key for Durkheim, but in reality, all that is society's own power and sense of self projected out. So how did this happen? And this is really key. If you look on page 220, you can look back at this again. He has this description of collective effervescence. This is his term. This is a crucial term in the history of sociology, whereby basically he says in collective effervescence, the group comes together, comes closely together, so they're tied together, and an energy develops just from the fact that a group comes together. So you think of Turner for a second here a little bit. The group leaves its normal activities of the structured time, maybe feeding, hunting, going to school, but comes together in a space, in a time, in a moment, and starts to basically interact, and you can think of, in Durkheim's mind, you can start to think of almost like survivor rituals, right? With the torches in the background and the drums beating and people kind of starting to lose themselves in the moment. That's the archetypical example of a ritual for Durkheim, is kind of this feverish collective effervescence. So collective coming together, and effervescence means kind of giving off of energy and of buzz just by the fact of coming together and being drawn into this moment. And the Super Bowl is a great example of that, right? When you get that feeling, maybe that anxiety of what are the Cardinals going to do, and then the Cardinals make a run for the touchdown, and so that experience of being together and watching this makes the room erupt, even though the room is 2,000 miles away from the Super Bowl, and there's this buzz, and all of a sudden people, the members of this group, feel this power, so much so that they feel that they might have been able to get on that field and make that 60-yard dash for the touchdown. There's like this kind of surge and this feeling of power within individuals, and for Durkheim, that's the lifeblood of society kind of running through people. And Durkheim then also argues that what's important here is that not that ideas are making this all happen, but that just coming together and experiencing the ritual itself, getting the body into the ritual, getting our bodies into it, we begin to lose ourselves, and things bigger than ourselves begin to guide us. You can think of here too for a second about the Covington reading, when he gives this great description of being unsure about this snake handling ritual, but then he kind of swirls into starting to do this ritual with the group. Before he knows it, he's holding the snake, and his mind is kind of flipped over to this other moment where he feels outside of his body and kind of doing things with the snake that are completely different than if he had just been kind of sitting alone holding a snake. And he actually feels that he has this power to kind of be able to handle this snake without being bitten. Okay, so these are all, examples of what Durkheim is trying to tell us. So then the question becomes, thinking about Durkheim, well, what is it about rituals that are so dang important? And so let me take you through a couple of answers to this. Well, first off, as we've already noted now, that ritual really is kind of the basis of religion. It's one of the key bases of religion for Durkheim, and it is what re-enlivens the ideas, beliefs, totems of a group, which are the things that guide social members when they're not together. Okay? Think of this for a second. You're watching the Super Bowl and they do the national anthem, and everybody's kind of together, and in that moment, this respect is given to this flag. Everybody hushes. People kind of zone in and focus in, and maybe get well up with tears and stuff. And for Durkheim, that's really important, right? Because it's this kind of re-enlivening of this core ideas of the group that are in that flag. And so in Durkheim's argument, later on, when we're apart, when we're no longer at the Super Bowl watching this anthem together, and we see the flag, we'll get that little stir inside of us, or in getting that stir, not only are we reminded of the ideas of the flag, but importantly for Durkheim, it's circular, that those ideas we think about the flag really are us thinking about our social group again, and now staying tied with the social group. Rituals always also kind of clarify behavior. So rituals tell us what to do now with these ideas or beliefs that have been generated. So we now know to in the case of the soldier, to give one's life on the behalf of this flag, which in Durkheim's interpretation of it would be giving one's life on behalf of the group, because again, the flag is just the group represented as this kind of abstract symbol or idea. Rituals also order space and time, right? The Super Bowl comes around one time a year. Christmas comes around one time a year. Holy days oftentimes come around numerous times a year. So these rituals have the ability to kind of structure when and how groups and individuals move through social time. Rituals also create leaders. He has this great little passage where he talks about, and you can imagine this, have you ever given a speech in front of the group or watched a speech and watch how oftentimes it seems like the speaker is able to rise above his or herself because they're getting applause and energy from the people in the audience. You might have even seen some of this during the last election campaign and the way that happened. So these rituals even have the ability to kind of put special powers into individuals, which again, for Durkheim, this is really important, come from society. And then, and this is probably one of the biggest things, is that rituals make it so that society is respected. And this is where he went into some long comments about the moral authority of society. That these moments of coming together and feeling the buzz and focusing on a symbol or an idea are enough to make it so that at some deeply unconscious level, we so respect society that when we leave these moments of ritual and go back into regular time, we will continue to live out of respect for society. So we'll continue to do what is important for the social group to keep going. Now, that's a pretty quick description of what's going on for Durkheim, but really, overall, you guys caught a lot of this. And as some of you pointed out, so what Durkheim is basically saying is that it's society, and Durkheim literally says that it's society that is God. So this idea, these symbols, and for purposes of our class, these religious gods or the religious ideas are really nothing but the society itself kind of projected out onto this external symbol that acts back on us. And this is very similar to the reading that we did from Berger last week. He speaks in very similar ways. Now let me say a couple of problems with this argument before I answer some of your questions. One main problem, and a lot of you picked this out, is he's really vague. Vague about how, for example, beliefs about Jesus or Adonai or Vishnu, which are core persons in modern religions, how these ideas would come about from a ritual process like this. It's not at all clear that if we took Durkheim really seriously, we might say, like, well, is it possible that kind of this person of Jesus is really just a projection of a group? Especially, is it possible if so much of that religious tradition is about the group's inability to fully be like this religious person, and so always falling short? That doesn't seem to quite jive with Durkheim's argument, where he says that this ideal, this symbol, is really the group itself. Wouldn't we expect the group to be able to kind of achieve the perfection of that ideal more if this was really the case? As one of you also very clearly